All right, our number one safety in college football is a transfer. Caleb Downs, one of the biggest transfers we had this offseason, going from Alabama to Ohio State. The Buckeyes are loading up for a national championship run, Dalton, and they got the best safety in the country, and Caleb Downs coming in.
They sure did. And you know, it's funny because Ohio State, that safety was probably the one spot where they weren't elite, and now they're very suddenly elite. Look, what Caleb Downs did last year makes absolutely no sense at all. As a true freshman, comes in and has the 9th best overall grade in the country and the 6th best ever in PFF history by a true freshman safety. So an 88.9 coverage grade, 2 interceptions, 3 pass breakups, and just so it's so impressive, his instincts at such a young age in the run game, in the pass game. Like, he, after the first 3 games, he basically spent 3 games as a freshman. And then all of a sudden he was a senior. That's what it looked like, really. He got to SEC play. He goes, okay, we lost to Texas and we bounced back, and now I figured it out. Now I'm the best safety in the country. Because I believe from week 4 onward, he was the highest graded safety in the country, higher than Dylan Thieneman. So he finished his year. It was almost so obvious that he was. It's just like, this kid is special. His instincts, his ball skills, his range, his football IQ, just everything about him is what you want in a safety. And he looks like a senior, but he was a freshman. And now going to Ohio State and all the guys that they're bringing back, he's the final piece that makes them possibly the best defense in the country and possibly a national title winning defense this season, because he's the one thing they were missing. They have everything else, right? They have a loaded D-line. They have corners. This is the one guy they were missing, a prime-time safety who can do everything for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he was super highly rated coming out of high school. He's actually Josh Downs' little brother, Colts receiver Josh Downs right now. He's going to join his brother in a couple years in the NFL really soon, because how special he's been already. He was actually the highest rated safety coming out of high school since Derwin James. And Derwin James, obviously one of the best safeties in the league right now. He's consistently been that his whole career. Downs was a first-team All-American this past year for PFF, second among all safeties among all Power 5 safeties with 16 coverage stops. 88.9 coverage grade was third in the Power 5 as well. He actually, Dalton, I believe he's the first rising sophomore to lead one of PFF's position rankings since Brock Bowers heading into the 2022 season. So we're talking about a special. It is hard for a true freshman to be so good as a true freshman. He's the number 1 player in the country at his position the following year. That's what Caleb Downs is, man. He really has no glaring weaknesses in his game, which is ridiculous considering he was a high school senior the year before, man. It's stupid. And I can't wait to see what he does at Ohio State this upcoming season. So, listen, man, I think these top 4 guys, Dawn, really have no weaknesses, really, it feels like, in their game. But what were some of the weaknesses that you see with Caleb Downs right now?
This was so hard to find, and you mentioned the top 4 is hard to find for all. The only thing I would say is he's not the type of guy like how Alabama used to have Brian Branch or even like a Kyle Hamilton at Notre Dame, right, where the only thing I wouldn't do with him is probably drop him in the slot and play him in man coverage a lot. A 63.2 man coverage grade. That's about it. Like, as a classic safety, whatever you want, deep half, single high, all the usual safety things you think about, it's just elite. That's about the only thing is like man coverage, single coverage. But honestly, it's generally advantageous for an offense anyway if they get a slot receiver or a really good tight end. Like this year, you see him like in a couple of reps of man-to-man with like Brock Bowers. I wouldn't even sit here and expect a Caleb Downs to win that, right? Like, or we talk about it like in the NFL, I think about the touchdown that Travis Kelce had on Kyle Hamilton. I'm like, right, like they're safeties, they're not corners, right? So if I have anything at all, it's that I just wouldn't necessarily like how Brian Branch was really a slot corner and they called him a safety, and it's a little of both, but he's probably leans more towards like, okay, he's a corner, he can play man-to-man. Downs doesn't really, he can do, it's passable, right? He can do it here and there if you need him to, but just as all the fundamental skills of a safety, I've got nothing.
Yeah, it's really hard, man, to find. And the one thing I noticed when looking at some of his grades and his metrics, he's a 55th percentile gas score, but at the same time, he hit 21.6 miles an hour on our GPS tracking. So that's really fast. So I think just overall, I think he can get a little bit better as an athlete. But again, he's only a true freshman, so he can get a little bit better. But he's not as freaky of an athlete as, say, Dylan Thieneman was, right? Or even Kevin Winston Jr. that we talked about earlier too.
Some of that too, though, is about opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Like Thieneman's a freak. But the opportunity to play center field and play single high like that, like in Alabama's defense, there's a lot of like passing off and concepts where like you're kind of helping each other out and you're not just getting in a dead sprint all the time like that. Like there's a part of that at safety and even at corner that can come with an opportunity in the style of the defense too.
No, that's a great point. And the only other thing, Dalton, that maybe we should talk about, and that could be a negative, he is working out at running back this year for Ohio State. What are your thoughts on that? I kind of hate it. I'm not going to lie. What are your thoughts on it?
A couple things. I'm surprised it's not actually at receiver where his brother plays, where that might be a thing. But is it entirely necessary when you have Judkins and Henderson back there?
No.
I wonder if Travis Hunter fever is starting to get some of these guys.
I think
right?
it is.
Like maybe like we've seen a couple of guys even in baseball since Shohei Ohtani came around that have tried this, right, with the two-way thing, and maybe that's what we're getting. Maybe Caleb, and look, maybe he is that good, right? Or last year we saw even a guy like Sione Vaki had a huge impact, right, at Utah. It was one of the things that really, kind of got their season back on track was putting him at running back. But it seems dangerous. I also think, we've seen this in the past, though, right? Going all the way back to Deion Sanders, or honestly, that's how football used to be played, right? Adoree Jackson, I think, was another one at USC. Didn't he play a bit both ways?
Yes. Yeah.
He
did. Yes.
I think he played some. I'm a little surprised it's not at receiver because I feel like that'd be a little safer. I get what you're getting at with the running back thing, but I also think with Judkins and Henderson in there,
it's
Ohio State's going to have no issue with anybody, with resting anybody or any of that. So if they're getting Caleb Downs running backs reps, maybe he's really darn good. Maybe there's something we're missing here. And he's like he's like this greater version of like what Sione Vaki was last year. Vaki went in the 5th round or 6th round of the draft, something like that.
The Lions took him. I forgot when.
It's weird to see it with a star player like Downs, or like that's why Travis Hunter is such a big deal, right? They don't need it for sure, but if he winds up being their 3rd best back, then I guess more power to him.
Yeah, I just hate, like, running back's a very physically demanding position. I don't want him getting hurt doing that. I don't want him wasting his time doing that either, like when he could be spending time playing safety instead of taking reps at practice at running back. I don't want to waste his energy either. I don't know. I feel like they need him as safety a lot more. They have by far the best running back unit in the country with Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson there. Don't think this is needed. I think a little bit too. They're not going to admit this. I think a little bit is trying to get maybe a Heisman campaign going for Caleb Downs. Like, they're going to be one of the top teams in the country. He's going to be a top safety in the country. Going to make some plays, maybe get him some rushing yards, rushing touchdowns too to help out the Heisman case. I don't know, because I feel like Ohio State, maybe Will Howard, doesn't really feel like to me a top Heisman contender right now. Judkins and Henderson are going to split carries too, so I don't feel like they're really top contenders either. Maybe Downs is the guy. They're like, oh, you know what? Maybe we could get him some carries. I don't know. They won't admit that again, but I think the Heisman might play a little bit into that. But I personally don't love it, considering how loaded they are at running back already, and they just don't need that. And at best, he's your number 3 running back at best. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't love it. But as a safety, there's really not a lot to complain about with Caleb Downs. Just the wanting to play running back. And also, Don, I feel like we should mention this for the whole running back thing. That might have been a selling point for him to go to Ohio State. He might have been going to Ryan Day and telling these schools, like, hey, yeah, I'm going to play safety for you, obviously. I want to get some reps at running back too. And that might have been a sticking point for him. And if Ohio State said, no, look, we're good, he would have been like, all right, I'm going to go somewhere else. I'll go to Georgia then, or something like that. Like, that could have been a thing too, where it's like maybe that was part of his recruitment in the transfer portal. It's like saying, hey, you want me to come play safety for you? I want to play some running back too. That might have been a thing to mention for Caleb Downs as well. But yeah, man, Caleb Downs is the best safety in college football, and we'll see how he does running back this year. But he's a pretty special player that Ohio State has right now.